Hello. Today is Sunday, give me one moment. Sunday, April 5th, 2026. And, I wonder. Since Friday, God has been inspiring me to say this message. And so I feel safe and comfortable enough out in the garden to finally share these thoughts. So my name is Tamar, and Tamar is a very biblical name. And it's intriguing because even those who say that they follow Abrahamic faith, I'll ask them, do you know the story of Tamar in the Bible? And a lot of them will say no. But if they do, they'll say, oh, wasn't she a prostitute? And it's like, no, Tamar wasn't a prostitute. And so as a woman who's read the Old Testament many times throughout the course of her life, and has been very interested in the stories of Tamar in the Bible, of which there are two, I come to find a huge disagreement behind a conventional understanding of Tamar and her story, posited by others, and how I read and interpret it. So Tamar is a person, a courageous woman in the Bible, and both of the Tamars were treated very wrong by humans in her life. And the theme of justice comes up with the story of both Tamars in the Bible. The first Tamar was a daughter-in-law of Judah, and he abandoned her. And after he abandoned her, he was, going about his business, and he was in the area where Tamar lived. And Tamar heard about it, and she went out and she covered her face. And he encountered her after she covered her face, and he propositioned her for sex. And she said, "What would you do? Like, what you gonna give me?" And he said, "Well, what you want?" And she said, "Well, I want your sword, your staff. Your staff, your cord, not sword. Your staff, your cord, and your seal." He gave them to her as kind of like promissory notes, and was going to come back to pay her for sexual services. Now, he did what he needed to do, and he went off. And Tamar, she put her widow's garb back on, took her veil off, and she came out pregnant from the encounter. And the months later, when people figured out that Tamar was pregnant, they went to Judah, her father-in-law, who abandoned her, and said, well, she's pregnant. What you gonna do? And he said, burn her. He said, burn her. He said, kill this woman who became pregnant. My family member I abandoned. And he was thinking, oof, now I really don't have to worry about, taking care of this woman who's in my family, who I promised her I'd take care of her, and I didn't go back on my promise and make good on it. So she came, where they were going to burn her in front of him. And she said, well, the man I'm pregnant by, he owns these things. What's up? She didn't, snitch on him. She just said, what you gonna do? This is your actions. You gonna burn me for what you did? You gonna kill your own babies? And he said, she's more righteous than me. Don't burn her. And she had twins. And they're in the ancestry of King David. Now, it's interesting because people will say she purposely and intentionally dressed as a prostitute. And in my mind, I'm thinking, putting on a veil, people will interpret that in the Bible and say, oh, outside of the historical context, a woman putting on a veil is a woman dressing like a prostitute. And it's intriguing because from my perspective, she was putting on a veil just to see what he was going to do. He's walking through her area after abandoning her, and he's not hitting her up. And the first thing he does, he sees some random woman on the street, and he's going to spill his seed to the point where he gets someone pregnant. Just loosey-goosey. And not taking care of his responsibilities, not taking care of his family, not even owning up to the promises he made. And I find every time somebody says that she dressed as a prostitute to trick him, I think, no, that's not what happened. As a woman who's reading that, I'm interpreting it completely different, and I reject and rebuke that, because she was just a woman who was abandoned trying to see what her family was going to do. And they abandoned her, and they would use her sexually. He would use a woman sexually. And I reference other places in the Bible. When Rebecca first saw Isaac, she became so shy that she put a veil over her face. Was her putting a veil over her face acting like a prostitute? No, she was covering herself. Another instance is when Moses started talking with Yahweh in the tabernacle face to face. When he would leave the tabernacle, when he would leave, his face would be glowing so brightly that people would be afraid to look at him, so he put a veil over his face. Moses put a veil over his face. So you mean to tell me that's dressing like a prostitute? And I honestly think the Bible is so intelligent that it would construct that scene. And all through time, especially in this time, I see people talking about, Tamar was a prostitute. She dressed like a prostitute to get out of trickery. She didn't know what Judah was going to do when he came upon her. She didn't know. She was just trying to gauge what he was going to do. And even to this day, as a woman, if you dress completely in a burqa, people are going to judge you. If you dress to where nobody sees you, people are going to judge you. Do you look like a prostitute because you're dressed completely? If you wear a short, tight dress, people are going to judge you. Does that mean you're dressing like a prostitute? If you go out in a bikini, a string bikini, are you dressing like a prostitute? If you go out in a full cover-up swimsuit, does that mean you're dressing like a prostitute? Like, a man can come upon somebody completely covered, head to toe, and think, dang, I kind of just want to have sex. That's on him. And a man could have family and completely abandon them and judge a person and judge them according to death for their own sin, what they do. And that's what the story of Tamar highlights. It's that hypocrisy. She wasn't dressed like a prostitute. Anyways, I've been meaning to share that because there's a lot of, I don't know, I really detest that interpretation of Tamar in the Bible, because she deserves better than that. Just because a man looks at you wearing something doesn't make you a prostitute, and the judgment of a man does not reflect who you are. She didn't accuse him. She just waited for things to unfold. She trusted God. She said, well, if you're going to play loose with your seed, fine. Let's see what happens. So this is how little you value your family. This is how little you value your family. You would just make babies out here for nothing. You would give up everything in one moment. Your sword, your cord, your staff, and your seal. Your sword, your cord, your staff, and your seal. You would give those up for a little sex with somebody you haven't even seen their face. And you would not go and see your family and not take care of your responsibilities. Well, I mean, he did sell his brother into slavery, so that man was dealing with a lot. But aren't we all? Aren't we all dealing with a lot? So yeah, I wanted to share that because Tamar was not dressing like a prostitute. I rebuke that interpretation of the Bible, and I'm going to posit my own. The Bible is reflecting that a male's gaze and how he contrives of her and treats her, that's on him. Yeah, so many blessings.